Now, one of the most controversial teams on the grid right now is Alpine, as the French squad are facing some tough challenge in terms of their drivers' lineup. Although they've reached the long-lasting dream of having a full French squad from 2023 onwards, it seems like it came with a lot of negativity, mostly because the tension between Ocon and Gasly that dates from their childhood never simmered down. With this in mind, as well as Ocon admitting to being in talks with other teams regarding his future, could we see a massive shakeup in Alpine? And more importantly, will we see Mick Schumacher make a full return to the sport? It's safe to assume that Alpine are currently facing a difficult period that's been further exacerbated by the crash in Monaco, one that was forced by Ocon after trying to complete a reckless pass on Gasly in the first lap of the race. The team boss, Bruno Famin, was not happy with what he saw, openly threatening the Frenchman that he'll be facing a lot of consequences for his actions, despite Ocon's tone turning apologetic after the crash. When talking about the future of Esteban, Famin said, "Esteban's attack was completely out of line. It's exactly what we did not want to see, and there will be consequences. We're going to make a tough decision. On the first lap at the Portier, it was not the place to make a move, leaving no room for his teammate." Now, this is not something that should be understood in an easy manner. This is practically the first time that Alpine has taken sides in the fight between Ocon and Gasly. And whether we like it or not, this is a situation in which the French team cannot thrive under any circumstance. That's why Alpine is now openly looking at other options when it comes to hiring another driver, such as Mick Schumacher, one that Famin has openly spoken about in recent years. Even before the Monaco GP happened, Ocon's future with Alpine has been brought under a huge question mark, precisely because he's not satisfied with the direction that Alpine is moving in. And although his actions will cost the team not only points in the Constructors' Championship, but also a huge financial burden that they would be forced to put into repairs rather than upgrades, Ocon still believes he holds the cards when it comes to negotiating the better end of the contract with Alpine. When talking about his future with Alpine, Esteban went on to say, "It's an important year in my career and I want to do the best I can. I don't want any regrets at the end of the year, and there's going to be a lot of work on and outside the track. There are going to be chats with the team because I'm in the last year of my contract, and they are now a lot more in my favour than when we negotiated back in 2019. I'm a race winner and a podium finisher. We have a lot of arguments in my favour." But all of this has been discussed prior to the Monaco GP. And now, the CV of Ocon has received some massive downgrade. He's been the primary cause of what happened between him and Gasly, and therefore this will be heavily utilised from Alpine's side. While the team basically hit rock bottom at the beginning of the year, when they literally weren't able to build a car, even if their life depended on it, as the A524 struggled with the weight limit and missed a lot of the aerodynamic goals, these steps are being fixed one by one. This is why the last thing that Alpine will tolerate is an intra-team battle between two drivers who are showing intentions to fight for themselves and not for the greater good of the team, which is exactly where Mick Schumacher comes in handy. The young German driver has been openly discussing a return to Formula 1, and while many believe that could be with Mercedes after Hamilton's departure, the Silver Arrows have quickly shut down that door and have now focused on signing Antonelli from 2025 onwards. But even if this is not to turn into reality, the chances for Mick to join the team that he helped so much with his simulator work are slim to zero. But the fact that he's currently racing for Alpine in the Endurance Championship says a lot about the connection he has with the French team. Even when he was signed in this category, the team boss Bruno Famin said that if a proper F1 opportunity arises for Mick, he wouldn't be stopped to join it. And right now, it seems like that opportunity can be directly offered by Alpine themselves. When talking about Mick's chances to join Alpine, Bruno Famin went on to say, "He is one of the possibilities, that's for sure. Like many others, Mick is currently doing an incredible job in our endurance program. What's very impressive is his mindset. Of course, he's very fast, but I think everybody knows that. It's not always useful to have a very good lap time because you have the balance of performance on top. You have to be a bit careful with the performance. Mick, from the very first minute, he's been very cooperative and really helpful for his teammates. I'm very impressed with him because he's adapted his attitude to endurance racing from day one. Everything is open for 2025, everyone is talking to everyone, and it would be a mistake not to have Mick on the list." Now, an even greater hit for Ocon's chances to continue the collaboration with Alpine, apart from the dysfunctionality of the team, is the fact that he might be benched for the upcoming GP in Montreal. Bruno Famin wants to make an example out of the Frenchman, and by putting Jack Doohan in the seat for the upcoming race in Montreal, Bruno will definitely give Ocon a taste of what his life outside of F1 would be. Something that the Frenchman was able to taste back in 2019 when he opted for the role of being Mercedes' reserve driver after driving for Racing Point. Many believe that Gasly had his own share of actions against Ocon, such as the one in Australia, as well as the opening sequence of Monaco where he tried to squeeze Esteban in the wall, visible from Stroll's onboard, but nonetheless, the penalised driver in this case was Esteban Ocon. He received a 3-place grid penalty that will be served in Montreal and also a 10-second time penalty for Monaco, but it's even questionable as to whether he'd be able to serve this penalty if the French team decides to replace him with Jack Doohan or Mick Schumacher. If Jack Doohan manages to prove himself worthy of an F1 seat, then it's safe to assume that Alpine would be looking in their options in a very interesting manner, because they're now in a desperate need of a duo of drivers who would be able to put their head down and work their way up, unlike Gasly and Ocon, who we cannot blame for wanting to win races after being present in the sport for such a long time. But unfortunately, this cannot be provided from the Enstone-based team. When talking about his own future in Formula 1, Mick Schumacher went on to say, "My goal and my dream is to drive in Formula 1. That's always been the case and always will be. That's why we have to make sure that the dominoes now fall in my favour and that I hopefully end up with a seat. What I can do for that is simply give my best performance in the WEC and also in Formula 1 and continue to perform well for the team as reserve driver and continue to hold talks." However, even Mick's future with Alpine is under a huge jeopardy, because if there is one thing that the French manufacturer is known for, it's building academy drivers to the top of their racing profiles and promoting them in F1. Had it not been for the poor handling of the entire Piastri situation, we would have likely seen the Aussie driver next to Ocon. Something that I can gladly say I'm happy it didn't happen. But nonetheless, it doesn't take away from the fact that Piastri was groomed by Alpine, and so is Jack Doohan, who was extremely good during his F2 days and is now eager to prove that he has what it takes to race in F1. All of this goes to show that Ocon's future in the team is definitely under a huge threat, and the Frenchman has already been linked with a move to Haas. Obviously, Magnussen's seat is not the strongest one on the grid as we speak, especially not after the massive crash he caused in Monaco after trying to squeeze the car where there isn't enough space, and with Behrman knocking on the door as well, Haas could very well enter with a brand new duo of drivers from 2025 onwards. So with this in mind, do you think that Ocon would leave Alpine? And more importantly, do you think that it would be Mick Schumacher who would replace him? Let us know in the comments down below.